Welcome back to another episode of Lost in the Farmer's Market Garden Shorts, where today we're looking at these two lovely specimens in the lab. Now they're in I think that's a 6 or 8 inch pot there, so they're easy to bring in, and it's not balling sideways weather-wise. So yeah, things are back on track here. Now, their scientific name is Heuchera Americana. Yeah, I know, it's because what garden pimp is complete without some Heuchera? Da-da-da-da-da-da. No, but seriously, it's spelled Heuchera, but it's pronounced Heuchera. It's named for someone, believe it or not. Yeah, so anyway, these two varieties, first and foremost, this is Marvellous Marble, and this is Dale's strain. Now, they are both in the Saxifragaceae family, the saxifrage family, which doesn't tell you much, seeing as how the family's named after but their common name, most commonly found, is coral bells. And that's because they're not just a pretty foliage plant, they have some pretty flowers too. Now, they are native to North America, so this is a native plant, and it is non-invasive, as far as I know. I'm sure there's someone who's going to say it's invasive in, the southernmost tip of Taiwan or something like that. But anyway, in North America, where they belong, not so much. They are hardy in USDA zones 4 through 9, and they're classified as an herbaceous perennial. Their pH range preference is apparently 6 through 7, which isn't too bad, and their exposure is shade to partial sun. Their height can be 1 to 2 feet, and their width can be 1 to 1.5 feet. Now, as you can see, this one is technically cheating. This is a singular plant, and as you can see, it's on its way to meeting those criteria. This is a cluster of 4 plants, actually. And I got them in a plastic cell 4-pack. So I clustered them together thinking, okay, it'll get really leafy and cool quickly that way. Because I didn't know this guy had survived in the garden. Now, talking about care and concerns, in the case of Heuchera, they're going to need some help. The spot I put it has decent soil. It's been amended with compost and wheat straw and stuff like that. But it's dry. It's a bit too dry for this guy. But once I put it in a pot, like gangbusters, it exploded. It needed a little help. Also, it's under the shade of a dogwood and competing with other plants that are a bit more vigorous, and so it was not really getting the best. So this is actually more for recuperation. Now, I should point out these plants have other common names, such as American alum root, rock geranium. Rock geranium? No, that sounds like a B-52's reference. But anyway, alum root. Yeah, I know, we went back and around in a circle kind of there. But anyway, the name Heuchera itself is from an 18th century botanist who's German. His name is Johann von Heucher. I feel like after watching Young Frankenstein, the great Mel Brooks film, there ought to be like a lightning bolt in the background and horses going nuts, but it didn't happen, so whatever. Anyway, it's named for him, so that's where Heuchera comes from. It's not some weird Latin thing. Usually it is some weird Latin thing. Now, in terms of care, you should divide clumps every 3 to 4 years to keep their vigor. You do this in spring. You basically split them in half. It is very drought tolerant once it's established, and that usually takes about a year. Now, this one survived in a not great location for many years, and this is the recovery, and as you can see, it's, again, doing very well. The foliage itself is high in tannins, making it very bitter, and thus, rabbits and deers won't mess with it much, because it's sour as hell. But, as it turns out, that tannin content relates to why it's called alum root. The plant doesn't contain a single drop of actual alum in it anywhere, period. But it's called that because when dying, compounds in this plant were a viable and equivalent substitute for actual alum, henceforth the name alum root. Now, I don't know if they just use the roots or they use the foliage, but still, it's really fascinating because, in a forage situation, you might have to dye your own clothing. So now you know where to get something as a substitute for the chemical compound alum. Additionally, this plant was the 1999 North Carolina Wildflower of the Year. Now, that gets back to where I was before. These things do eventually bloom. In fact, they bloom usually, I believe it's in summer. And some would argue that the foliage is what you're there for, not the bloom. But the blooms are the attractive unto themselves, and given that it's a North American native, henceforth the Americana in the name, in the scientific name, that indicates of North America or South America, of the Americas in general. This plant has interesting foliage. Now, these ones are not the fanciest out there by a long shot. There are ones with much more dramatic foliage, but Marvellous Marble is really pretty. Now I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. Get a little zoomy zoom. Zoom. And rotate the camera. Now as you can see, Marvellous Marble has, sort of a brownish purple, and then the marbling, and this plant is in recovery, so it's not featuring full color yet, but by midsummer it'll probably be pretty amazing. Now over here, Dale strain seems to have this frosted coating on it, and dark coloration around the veins. I'm going to rotate this just a little bit. Dark coloration around the veins and the frosting, and I have yet to see what the full spectrum of its color will be. However, these little plants are reacting well to their care, which is good. Now, beyond this, I want to say that, as if I didn't say it before, Heuchera is just fun to say. Because people go, what did you say? But anyway, I recommend this plant for your garden because it is a shade and partial sun option. I don't cover many of those because a handful of those catch my fancy. But, I'm trying to get more into it and cover stuff that I haven't covered before. So, if you like this video, or you have any thoughts on growing Heuchera, or you have any good pimp jokes, because Heuchera pimp, enough said, leave a comment in the comments. Hit the subscribe button if you can. Like the video if you liked it. Or if you have any thoughts about a future video, go ahead and kick them thoughts in the comments. A link to the Forage blog is included with this one, and the last two things that we did in the Forage blog was Chinese wisteria and, darn, I can't remember the other one, but that's okay. You'll see what I mean soon enough. Anyway, as always, folks, thanks for watching, and keep them growing.